In this video, I'm going to tell you about coenzyme Q10, also called CoQ10. I'm going to tell you about what it is, how it affects your health, how to supplement with it, and I'm going to recommend specific brands of coenzyme Q10 for supplementation. But before I do, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and leave a comment down below for the sake of the algorithm. Before we begin, have a look at the description of the video below. You'll find a link to a blog post that I've written as a companion blog post to this video. The blog post is very easy to navigate. It's not like large blocks of text. You have certain sections and citations. So because I have so many citations for this video, it was time prohibitive to put all the pictures of the citations next to me. So if you'd like any of the citations, visit the blog post and you'll find them there. You'll also find links to the supplements that I recommend at the end of the video. What's a coenzyme? A coenzyme is a small molecule that cannot by itself catalyze a reaction, but can assist other enzymes in doing so. So for example, vitamins B1, B2, and B6 are all coenzymes. Coenzyme Q10, which I'll henceforth call CoQ10, was first isolated from bovine, which means cow tissue, in 1957. It was quickly called ubiquinol because it's found in virtually every cell of the body. It is an essential component of the mitochondrial electron transport chain and is found in the highest density in organs of our body that have the highest energy turnover. For example, the liver, kidneys, brain, and heart. Interestingly, it's composed of an isoprene chain that gains more subunits for more developed animals. So for example, E. coli have a coenzyme Q8, whereas mice have a CoQ9 and 10, whereas we only have the CoQ10. CoQ10 transports electrons from complexes 1 and 2 to complex 3 to provide energy for proton translocation to the intermembrane space. It is necessary for cellular respiration and ATP production. CoQ10 is a scavenger of free radicals produced during oxidative phosphorylation of the inner mitochondrial membrane. It provides antioxidant protection for all the cells in our body and our lipoproteins. Now that we know a little bit about it, let's find out how it's associated with various elements of our health, beginning with the brain. CoQ10 supplementation in animal studies, rodent studies in particular, has shown some evidence in delaying the progression of neurodegenerative diseases. So for example, a water-soluble version of CoQ10 was shown to potently attenuate the progression of Alzheimer's disease models in rodents. The same was found for nanoparticles of CoQ10 with Parkinson's models, and the same was found for MitoQ, which is a specific kind of CoQ10 that's studied extensively in an ALS model in rodents. Although CoQ10 supplementation does not improve steroidogenesis directly in animals, it has been shown to inhibit the damage done by chemical exposure to animal steroidogenesis, meaning it somehow helps with the animal's defenses against exposure to antigens, likely due to its neutralization of free radicals. Now, regarding the effects of supplementing CoQ10 to antioxidant status, a meta-analysis of 17 studies found that although supplementing CoQ10 did not improve glutathione levels and certain other markers, it did decrease malondialdehyde levels and improve total antioxidant capacity. Patients with Down syndrome are known to have high inflammatory cytokine expression, and coenzyme Q10 supplementation in them was shown not only to improve inflammatory status but also reduce DNA damage. In people with autoimmune disease, CoQ10 supplementation has been shown to reduce C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation, and to reduce the levels of particular inflammatory cytokines, including interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Even in metabolic disease, CoQ10 supplementation has been shown to reduce tumor necrosis factor alpha. Metabolic diseases like things like diabetes and metabolic syndrome and so on. Now let's talk about how CoQ10 supplementation affects cardiovascular health. Let's begin with the Qsymbio Trial. In that trial of over 400 patients over a 2-year period suffering from chronic heart failure, 300 milligrams of supplemental CoQ10 not only improved their symptoms, but reduced cardiac events. And it was shown to increase their IGF-1 levels, which is significant because when patients are suffering from heart problems, slightly higher IGF-1 levels are protective. In a large Swedish study of 4 years of CoQ10 supplementation, the effects of the CoQ10 supplementation on cardiovascular health was still visible 10 years later. And a meta-analysis of people suffering with heart failure supplementing with CoQ10 found lower mortality and higher exercise capacity among those who did supplement. Now let's discuss the details of how CoQ10 may affect cardiovascular health. So for example, one of the things coenzyme Q10 seems to do is encourage vitamin E to act as an antioxidant as opposed to a pro-oxidant toward LDL particles, for example, that are floating around through our bloodstream and that can produce plaques. Another thing that CoQ10 supplementation does is it seems in some cases to reduce systolic blood pressure. It also seems to be able to reduce cardiac left ventricle remodeling following heart attacks or myocardial infarctions. And it's thought to potentially do that by reducing the activity of the angiotensin converting enzyme ACE. Interestingly, prophylactic CoQ10 supplementation before cardiac surgery can improve surgery outcomes, including lessening the rates of arrhythmias. So there are some very good reasons to think that supplementing with CoQ10 can help with cardiovascular health, particularly among people that already have heart failure. One shocking finding about coenzyme Q10 supplementation is while it cannot lower lipid levels, except triglyceride levels among diabetics, it does lower lipoprotein a levels, which is something very unusual because very few things can lower lipoprotein a. For those that don't know, there are polymorphisms in people's genes that can make them have very high levels of what's called lipoprotein a, which is an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. What can lower lipoprotein a, to our knowledge to today, is niacin, but we don't know if the lowering is effective, coenzyme Q10, and actually steroids, anabolic steroids. Now let's discuss statins. For those that don't know, statins are the most life-saving medications ever produced in the field of cardiology. Unfortunately, statins, by inhibiting the enzyme HMG-CoA, not only inhibit the synthesis of cholesterol, but also the synthesis of coenzyme Q10. In fact, myopathy, which means muscle weakness, which is one of the main unfortunate side effects of statins that prevent people from being able to use them. Not everybody gets them, by the way. I'm on a statin right now. I have no myopathy. But for those that do develop myopathy, it appears that the myopathy has something to do with a reduction in coenzyme Q10 and selenium-related proteins. So supplementation with coenzyme Q10 and selenium can often attenuate the myopathy, and it can improve, for example, endothelial function among diabetics that are taking statins, and it can reduce or attenuate the worsening of left ventricle diastolic function that is sometimes caused by statins. Now, regarding renal function, those are the kidneys. Renal function is the function of your kidneys. Regarding the kidneys, which we're all concerned about preserving through our lives, it remains unclear whether antioxidant supplementation can really preserve the function of the kidneys. However, in patients with chronic kidney disease, megadoses of coenzyme Q10, I think over a gram a day, have been shown to reduce some markers of oxidative stress. Now let's talk about aging and longevity. There is some evidence that genetically coenzyme Q10 can have some effect on aging. So for example, mice that have a polymorphism in their coenzyme Q7 gene can be exceptionally long-lived despite having average levels of coenzyme Q10. In a mouse model of senescence, coenzyme Q10 levels in the mice was associated with their longevity. And further, supplementing coenzyme Q10 to mice reduced their senescence. Remember what senescence is that our cells divide through our lives. They eventually reach what's called a dead end, that's called the Hayflick limit. They either die or become senescent cells. Senescent cells are responsible for a lot of inflammation that exists as we age, and there are drugs created called senolytics that kill senescent cells. One of the phytochemicals that does so is quercetin, for example. And so it's very interesting that coenzyme Q10 supplementation seems to delay the progression of senescence. It has even been shown to counteract telomere shortening in stressed organisms, but these were small organisms that were studied. Among the elderly, coenzyme Q10 levels in the blood are associated with physical activity, antioxidant status, and supplementing with coenzyme Q10 in the elderly appears to improve their subjective well-being. Now on fertility, some of you may not know how important CoQ10 is for fertility. First of all, the CoQ10 levels in semen fluid are associated with the antioxidant status and therefore the quality of the sperm in the semen. Moreover, supplementing with CoQ10, which is by the way done at many fertility clinics around the world, improves semen quality and increases the likelihood of fertility indirectly. Interestingly, CoQ10 supplementation has long-lasting effects. So for example, it's been shown in horses that if you supplement them with a gram of Ubiquinol, their CoQ10 levels increase by a factor of 2 to 5 and remain elevated for weeks thereafter. And the effects on semen quality, for example, remain elevated for about 4 weeks thereafter. Now let's talk about supplementing with CoQ10. First of all, if you are going to supplement with CoQ10, I would prefer to use either Ubiquinol, and if so, I have linked a specific supplement to you that is third-party reviewed and highly reliable. And if not, I would use MitoQ, which is a little bit more expensive, I think, on average, but far better studied. Well, it has really great results from its studies. Basically, MitoQ is supposed to be a kind of CoQ10 that may better get into the mitochondria of the cell. So the purpose of it really is the transportation. When you look at CoQ10 studies, a lot of it involves how to get the CoQ10 most absorbed and into the mitochondria. So MitoQ may have a higher likelihood of that happening. Now about doses. Dosages as high as 2.4 grams have been used in human clinical trials for extended periods, while doses as high as I think 3 grams have been used for shorter periods. So it's quite a safe supplement. Although with that said, very high doses have been shown to have toxicity in mouse studies, but not in human, not at the 2.4 grams in humans. So personally, I see supplementing with up to 1 gram a day in separate fat-containing meals to be quite safe, and I do so myself. Anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful. It's sort of a brief tour of what we know about CoQ10 supplementation. Although it shows a lot of effects on heart health and heart failure, in general, the effects appear to be, in my opinion, due to reducing oxidative stress in the mitochondria and across the body in general, also in lipid particles and so on. And in general, I love to find these antioxidants that we know are healthy, that have been trialed a lot, and that we can rely on to reduce our inflammatory markers and so on without harming our health. Anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful for you. I'll see you next time.